Hello everybody and welcome to this new Picotron tutorial. Today we're gonna see how to work on a complex GUI. We're going to have all GUIs we made in the previous lessons into a single project, so we can see how we can switch from one to another. First thing I like to do is printing my CPU usage on the draw method. If you do stat1, we're gonna have this printing. But obviously we want to put this elsewhere, like in a new function. Let's call it show CPU usage. We can call it here. We give this value 00. Actually, this is 0.02. So to make this a bit more readable, we could multiply this by 100 and have the percentage of the CPU that is being used. Okay, another thing we can do here is formatting the string like this, string.format %.2f. By doing this, we tell it that we only want two numbers after the point. Let's see. Yeah, 1 or 2. All right. We can even concatenate a string in this and do something like CPU dot and concatenate this again with something like this. All right. So we have CPU 2%. Now, to make this viewable, let's just make a rect field. Maybe give here an X and a Y value. And here we can do our X, Y, X plus 50, Y plus 10 with a color like 0. Let's do something like this so it's cooler. Yeah, so here we have our CPU usage. Now we can finally implement our other projects. Right, so I opened my other GUI files of the previous lessons, right? This was the second one where we did the scroll bars, and the third one where we did the radio button sliders and the checkboxes. So how do we implement these two new GUIs? We are on our project and we create a new file, scrollbar GUI.lua. Then we can include it here, .lua, and here we can paste it in our scrollbar GUI. And as you can see, we have two create GUI functions, and that's not good. Now, one thing we can do is giving this a new name, for example, scroll GUI, and then attach its element to the right GUI container. Okay. All right. And then we can make a current page variable like this, current page, for example, home. So here we can do something like if current page is equal to scroll, for example, then we do our scroll GUI draw all, the same thing we did before. Then in the GUI we do something, a tap of the file btn, which is this one. We want current page to become equal to scroll. We have to do the same thing in the update, obviously. Update all. So, oh yeah. Now, if I click on file, I should be able to see our scroll bar menu. And here it is. We can give it a new variable called tapped, which is equal to false by default. And then we do if self.tapped, then, no, actually, if it's not tapped and we're tapping it, then current page is equal to scroll. Else, current page is equal to home. And obviously self-tapped here becomes true because it's not tapped and we're tapping it. Forgot to add here the clean screen. Now, if we run this, what is going to happen? If I click on file, our scroll menu is going to appear. If I click on it again, it disappears. Right? And we see the CPU that gets down again. All right. This is one way of doing it. Let's now implement the GUI.lua of the third lesson, which I think has more than one file. Yeah, it has draw GUI. Let's create a settings GUI.lua file and let's include it here. Here we copy it. We paste the content inside. We make a new, I pasted in the draw GUI of the third lesson. We can now close this. All right, so another way of doing this is having all our GUI objects inside a function. Let's call it something like generate settings. Okay. And we want this generate settings in the same GUI. But until we call this function, these things are not going to appear. Let's see. As you can see, they don't appear because they're not called. So let's say, for example, we want to call them when we click on edit. We don't want this no more. So on tab, we want to call generate settings. As you can see, it appears. Now, if I click on it again, you may think nothing is happening, but the percentage of the CPU is getting bigger. That means it's generating multiple settings, and we don't want this to happen. So how do we bypass this? We have this function, this very easy function, which removes all children of a parent element. All right. So on our GUI, we can give it a new tapped value as before. And here we do as before. If the button has not been tapped yet and we're tapping on it, then generate our settings and make self-tapped equal to true. Else, remove all children and make self-tapped equal to false. But here we're going to pass it a new container. I'm gonna make this global because we're going to call this new file. Let's do something like settings container equal to GUI attach. Then we attach our settings to the new settings container we made. Now we can pass this settings container here in the remove all children function. This actually needs to go here. Yeah, it's even. So what is it saying here? It's saying that attempt to index a nil value global GUI in settings UI. And why is that? It's because we're including our settings GUI before we even define this thing, right? So let's take it here. And as you can see now, if I click at it, it appears. If I click it again, it goes away and the GPU gets lowered too. I hope you guys found this useful. If you got any question, as usual, ask in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.